Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light and said it was good. God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. John, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and darkness comprehended it not. I wanted to read those two back to back because those are, they're mirror images. One talks about the other. You can't have one without the other because Jesus was present in Genesis, and of course it's speaking about Jesus in John. So growing up, I had a lot of questions, because you go into the public school system and you're taught all these things and the scientific method and all these things that really kind of challenge this. It puts a question in your mind. What should I believe? Because this is so different from this, and this is supposed to be the truth, and they're saying that this is scientifically proven. So those type of questions. Where do we come from? What about the dinosaurs? I was a big fan of dinosaurs. I had little models of dinosaurs I could put together. And they were just little cheap wooden things. But I always loved just finding more different variations because it seemed like they were endless. So, but these questions, that I had, they shook me. Because there was an absence of someone explaining the connections. It seemed like there was always this, and then there was this over here. So I wanted to believe the Bible, but it didn't, in my mind, blatantly answer those burning questions that I had, and those who I asked, didn't have a convincing answer either. So I did what a lot of Christians do nowadays. They compartmentalize their beliefs. They take the science of the world that the world presents, and they put it in this column. They take their belief and they put it over here, and so their faith is not connected to any other part of their life, and a lot of times that ends up only coming out once or twice a week, and we exercise that faith in very limited fashion. So if we go to Isaiah 46. I put this up here in the Amplified. Remember carefully the former things which I did from ages past, for I am God and there is no one else. I am God and there is no one like me, declaring the end and the result from the beginning, and from ancient times the things which have not yet been done, saying, my purpose will be established, and I will do all that pleases me and fulfills my purpose. So in the Amplified here, it emphasizes why must we remember carefully these things that God has done for us. All these things that happen in the first 5 books, and especially in Genesis, why do we have to remember that carefully? Why do we have to understand the workings behind this? Because the books of the Bible were written to show the glory of what God has done for his people throughout history. These were all things that were a testimony to his greatness and his power. And if we disregard the first 5 books, cut up this and use these 2 prophets and just look at the New Testament, then it ends up completely eroding the foundation. And you can't build a house without a secure and firm foundation. So is the Bible a complete history of the world? No, it's not meant to be. It is most literally the word history, his story. It's his story. In a story, the author or director will direct your attention to the most important information to complete the story or plot. And I thought in the last couple of years, they're trying to really push virtual reality and what they call augmented reality, where augmented reality is just where you're wearing goggles or something and things are displayed and you can play video games and it jumps across the table in front of you or whatever. But this VR, this virtual reality, has really become a medium that people have built these different games and applications on. Well, and I'm not really sure whose idea it was to try to pitch this as a movie idea. This is something directors could use, and you could feel like you're in the actual movie. You're in the environment, trying to hijack your mind and get you into that environment and make it more real. The problem with it is, and the directors all said this, if you're wearing these goggles and you're free to look around and you see this landscape that you're in, the director has no control of what you see. You could look the other way, completely miss the whole plot of the movie, the whole suspenseful scene. You could miss it because you're looking around. And that's kind of what it made me think of. These things were amplified. These different things that are recorded here are amplified to show what God wants to show us. He was trying to highlight the important information that he wanted to communicate. So let's go back to John. We'll be jumping around back and forth today a little bit. John 21. I've got it up there. This one is also in the Amplified. Starting verse 24. This is the same disciple who is testifying to these things and has recorded them, and we know without any doubt that his testimony is true. And there are also many other things which Jesus did, which if they were recorded one by one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. So he's saying here, there's a lot more that we could write about Jesus. There's a lot more of these things that we could record and present to you, but we're showing you what you need to know, what is going to be the most important parts. This story could be written for eternity, literally, because of the greatness and all the wonders and miracles that were performed. So in recorded history, we can study a number of things in great detail because it has become easier and easier for us to document things or small details or frivolous details, things that really don't matter. And I wanted to show this using a history of photography. So once I saw this image, and it really kind of blew my mind because this is an image of Andrew Jackson. Believe it or not, it's a photo of, he was using a different method, but it is a photo of Andrew Jackson in 1840. And, without doing a lot of direct history on photography and how it came about and everything, I always assumed that, late 1800s, you kind of started getting some photographs. But this is 1840, and of course he was 74 years old here, and I believe that it says that they used mercury. This is a different type of photography. I'm not even daguerreotypes or whatever, but I can't pronounce that word, so I'm not gonna try to get it right. So that's amazing because it's almost like a bleak window into the past. So today we have the opposite problem of having too much information, drowning in information. Somewhere in the midst of this frivolous detail, we have to find the truth. And see, I use photography as an example because today we have computers. We can type to our heart's content. 24 hours a day, we can produce books, and all this kind of stuff. Before the printing press, before all that, there were papyrus, that you had a certain limited amount. It was a more tedious job to record these things. So you wanted to try to record the things that were important. But when I was growing up, we didn't have internet access. We were a little bit late to the game. And after I graduated, of course, when I was in school, anytime I had to do any kind of research on the internet, I would have to go to a library, have to go to a relative's house to do this internet, this research on the internet. So after I graduated from high school and had been working for a little while, I convinced my parents, let's get the internet. It'd be much more helpful to have it here, and not have to go somewhere else. So we signed up for dial-up. That was pretty much our go-to. That was the only thing that was available. There was no cable, there was no DSL back then, at least coming out to where we were. But with this, it opened up a whole window to the world. Of course, if you wanted to watch a 30-second video, you had to wait 30 minutes for it to download, or longer. The internet, though, has been the biggest help, and at the same time the biggest harm to the world in the area of information. And we have any information that we'd ever want at our fingertips, but that information can be suspect if it's not based on truth, and most of it is just frivolous details of someone's imaginations, and things that are propped up. So after this world of information was open to me, I was able to research those questions that had plagued me in my journey to the truth. Now, of course, back in this day when we had dial-up, when most of the country had dial-up, and unless you lived in a big city, you didn't have Facebook, you didn't have social networking. This wasn't the social networking that we had were online forums and what they called bulletin boards or BB boards. You could go on there and you could pose a question, you could communicate with different people. But then they started coming out with these build your own website, things, and it was kind of daunting if you didn't know what you were doing. You had to kind of go in there, get your feet wet, play around a little bit, and some of them had the drag and drops, and you could make your own website. So these things started to get more and more accessible, and voices started to get louder and louder with more of an ease. And today, up until today, you got Facebook, you got Twitter, you got everything that you can do from the palm of your hand. You don't have to sit down at a computer anymore. It's wherever you're at, you can say whatever you want to say, which is a very dangerous thing sometimes. So, I'd heard somebody the other day say the only skill that you need to publish anything on the internet today is the ability to breathe. And that's pretty much true. People can post anything they want. So even in the earlier days, there were groups of people who were posting misleading information. And I have a point to this, so I'm not just kind of going tangentially off here. So I remember falling for a lot of this misleading information. I remember falling into these conspiracy theories, these things that caused me to question everything. People were putting out new theories of this, new theories of that, and it was one of those things like I've discovered something. So it pulled me in that direction. So with this new window to the world and not a lot of foundational structure to build on, I would say that I was shaken in my faith. But has that ever happened to you? This is something that I think that we all go through at certain points. We're shaken if we don't have that firm foundation. And now it's even worse because in the past year they have invented this technology where you can basically, if you have a video of someone, you can have them stand on stage, look like they're saying anything you want them to say. They have voice recording. They can transform the voice to the person that's standing on stage, and you can actually, they call them deep fakes. They can actually have someone standing in a podium that they never stood at and say something that they never said. So, it's getting more and more deceptive. The deceit continues to grow. So, where was the truth in all of this? This was something that I went down this path, and I thought, this is stuff they've been hiding from us all along, and it was something that just kept on growing and growing. If we go to John 16, verse 12, this is in the Amplified as well. I have many more things to say to you, but you cannot bear to hear them now. But when He, the Spirit of truth, comes, He will guide you into all truth, full and complete truth. For He will not speak on His own initiative, but He will speak whatever He hears from the Father, the message regarding the Son. And He will disclose to you what is to come in the future. He will glorify and honor Me, because He, the Holy Spirit, will take from what is mine and will disclose it to you. All things that the Father has are mine. Because of this I said that He, the Spirit, will take from what is mine and will reveal it to you. So God reveals His truth to those who seek Him. At the time, I was seeking the new, the outrageous claims, that honestly was just tickling my ears. It sparked my own imagination, and at the same time, unknowing more subtly, was tearing down God's truth in my mind. It was challenging this, and since I didn't have a good foundation in His Word, it challenged that truth. In 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 3, for though we walk in the flesh as mortal men, we are not carrying on our spiritual warfare according to the flesh and using the weapons of man. The weapons of our warfare are not physical weapons of flesh and blood. Our weapons are divinely powerful for the destruction of fortresses. We are destroying sophisticated arguments and every exalted and proud thing that sets itself up against the true knowledge of God. And we are taking every thought and purpose captive to the obedience of Christ, being ready to punish every act of disobedience when your own obedience as a church is complete. And I put up here imaginations, because that's what we usually see in King James. But I liked it here because we are destroying sophisticated arguments. And that's what we see today, isn't it? We see these, I'm so-and-so, Dr. so-and-so PhD, and this is what I know, and this is what I've studied all my life, and it's a sophisticated argument. But behind it's imagination. It's not. There's no truth there. There's no truth to hold it up. And the more and more that I dig into a lot of that stuff that's claimed, there was a lot of guesswork. So the answer here is to have an answer. When you're confronted with a question, and this is something that I hope to get better at and stronger in, is when you're confronted with a question, especially on these things of the beginning and in the beginning, and all the things that it talks about, how things were created, how things were divided up, what happened with these physical things that happened back in a chaotic world that we see that order came out of because God said it to be so. We have to seek truth by the Holy Spirit. And I wanted to show a couple of things here. See, this is an example of conventional wisdom. Okay, so we see here how it has the 270 million, and it goes down in the Grand Canyon here. It lists more and more hundreds of millions of years. This was actually I'm not sure if that's all real. I know a lot of it's replica, but anyway, this is conventional wisdom versus God's truth. These things, this is how we were taught in public school, that we came from this and now we're here. And of course, we have a picture of the polar bears on the iceberg, because I couldn't not put a polar bear on the ice. You see that everywhere, and that's our fault. But anyway, so all of that to say, it's conventional wisdom, man's wisdom against God's truth. I'm always curious about how, the definitions behind what they call, scientific terms. I looked up conventional knowledge, defined as an acceptable opinion, judgment, and belief that is general about a specific matter. They are those opinions that are taken as true by the people in a certain place or the experts in that field. And then, of course, they had to throw here, as an example, is the belief people have on the shape of the earth. I thought that was funny. I was going to take that out, but I was like, really? The shape of the earth? Out of all these things that could be thrown in there is the shape of the earth. But that's conventional knowledge or conventional wisdom, man's wisdom versus God's truth. Now, I'm not saying that, all these things here, that's just an illusion, and I've been doing a lot of studying on the Grand Canyon, and how it was formed, and the biblical, scholars in this area, they seem to think that it was formed in minutes and hours, and then the rushing of the water out of the Great Plains, basically back towards the ocean beds there, carved that out over minutes and hours, and that's an amazing thing to think about, but I want to learn more about that, but that's conventional knowledge, millions and millions of years trying to exalt this imagination, sophisticated arguments against the knowledge of God and the truth of God. So let's go to John 16, verse 13. Howbeit when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth, for he shall not speak of himself, but whatsoever he shall hear, that shall he speak, and he will show you things to come. Our focus needs to remain on Christ, or we can get sidetracked by all these conventional wisdoms that seem to come out and change every couple of years. And then 14:6, Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. So the thing that really shook me as I was growing up and had these questions, and still had these questions a few years ago, how does this match up and how does that work, and those things need to be confronted head on, those things need, and of course we can't all become, archaeologists and things like this, but there are people who have become, these different professions, and and I was listening to this one guy. He's a paleontologist, biblical paleontologist, and he was doing a speech on paleontology and different geology of the rocks. And in the middle of it, he just went full preacher. I mean, he was, this is why God sent his son, and I was like, that's what science needs to be like, because I mean, this everything that he was saying there lined up, so much so you could not differentiate the science from the Bible and God's truth. And I just thought it was an amazing thing, because it all lines up. We're told that we need to separate it out, compartmentalize it. You can be spiritual if you want. Just go into that building over there. Make sure that you don't introduce that stuff over here, because that's going to interfere with our paradigm in the school system, and we need to have this thing propped up here. So that's the main thing that I wanted to speak on, because it's kind of opened my eyes to a lot of the things that I had questions about. Especially with what we see today in the study of that versus what is in God's Word, and it just I don't know. And this guy that I was talking about, he gets excited. He runs across the stage when he's talking about this stuff, because it is such an exciting thing when you can answer those questions that are going to derail so many people's faith. And he talks about people who started out with biblical sciences and went to a different university and was introduced with these, Dawkins and all these people who have these other views and basically lost his way because he lost sight of the truth, the life, the way, Jesus Christ.